Well, thanks everyone for coming. My dad had a long-winded preamble to this. I think long enough, so if you go to sleep, don't worry.
Oh, I
They
do have
only-
water back here if anybody needs it.
Yeah, you might need water. I don't know. But my great-great-grandfather read this speech 57 years ago. Actually, I did the math. I think right at the dedication of the new courthouse in 1890. Um, in Quincy, because the old one had burned down the year before, and in order to raise the money for it, they divided up lots and sold them for $546, which was enough to open the courthouse. None of the records were burnt in the fire for the old uh, courthouse, but amazingly, $546 bought a new courthouse. So whatever. All right, here we go. Company D, 29th Iowa, was enlisted August 13th, 1862. Rendezvoused at Council Bluffs, Iowa, September 3rd, 1862, and was mustered into service at Camp Dodge, 3 miles south of the city, on the first day of December 1862, and were ordered immediately to join Grant's 23rd Army Corps, then operating at Oklahoma, Mississippi, endeavoring to reach Vicksburg from the rear. The regiment marched on foot 170 miles to St. Joseph, Missouri, and on the train from there to St. Louis. The regiment were put into barrack, which had been occupied nearly a year by other troops, and the barracks were a hive of smallpox, measles, and diphtheria. This is going to come in later. Microbes, all of which diseases developed in the snow-covered swamps of Arkansas. 2 weeks later, carrying men of the Adams County Boys in Blue to their soldiers' graves, the regiment was diverted from its original destination to side march into Kentucky in a terrible campaign in the winter, snow, and mud in Arkansas, what is known as the White River Expedition. It was a 2-week campaign, a disastrous military blunder. In 15 inches of snow, in which 300 men were taken sick with measles, diphtheria, and fevers, compelled to sleeping in the snow, and wholly destitute of even cover. A more disastrous and useless waste of human life for so awful and not recorded in history. The suffering of the soldiers is indictable. John Deere, a hardy pioneer from Indiana, who lived near this place, became inoculated with the smallpox at Schofield Barracks. In 9 days, he was taken down and landed from a steamboat at Helena on January 10th. Ed Lee, a smallpox nurse, was left to care for him. John was put into the smallpox hospital and died January 15, 1863. This ain't a good story. 45 days after his muster, he was a brave, patriotic man, a good soldier, a kind neighbor, an inveterate hater of human slavery and every form of oppression. He did all he could and died in a hallowed cause. All honor his memory. John T. Scott, a smart, bright young man, and 22-year-old son of Joseph Scott, lived near Carl. He was a hopeful, sanguine-hearted, brave boy. Loyal and self-sacrificing, he was a drilled and very tractable soldier who would have been promoted for good conduct. He contracted diphtheria at Schofield Barracks and suffered intensely. He had all the care a soldier could have. He died February 9th, 1863, on board the steamboat Henry Clay at Helena, Arkansas. He was buried near John Deere in the Soldiers Field north of Helena. Jacob Herder was a self-sacrificing patriot. He already had 2 sons in the 4th Iowa Regiment, and himself could not stay at home when his country's liberty was assailed. His age was such that he would have been excused, but his patriotism was bursting. It's bound in its love of liberty for the hated human slavery with an inveterate hatred, could not for a moment endure the distress which his soul suffered when liberty was insecure. He was a good soldier and faithful to every duty. The exposures and terrors and sufferings and deprivations of his army life induced the typhoid fever. He went into a hospital and was sent away from his regiment. None of his comrades knew how or when or where he died. The War Office reports that he died in Memphis on April 19th, my wife's birthday, 1863. He too was a martyr to the cause of liberty. Garland Boswell was a young boy, only 18 or 19, with a beardless face, bright bluish eyes, and light auburn hair. A farmer's son of Albert Boswell, a patient, diligent, and loyal boy, ready for every duty, was always punctilious about obeying orders, no matter what his personal sacrifice should be. He was taken with chronic diarrhea, but refused to go to the hospital. He said he would not live and die with his comrades and not be sent away to some unknown hospital. Every well man in the whole company did everything that could be done. When he died in his tent on April 22nd, 1863, my brother's birthday and birthday, every comrade bowed their heads when Boswell died. No man in the company was more universally loved than Boswell. He was buried with honors of war and sleeps the sleep of the brave who die in their country's cause. John Alexander was a 6-foot son of James Alexander, 24 years old, well-developed, gallant soldier, an intelligent, upright man. He got a dreadful cold on picket on the White River, which resulted in typhoid fever. He died in a St. Louis hospital on April 29, 1863. Another of the gallant men from this township who gave his life for liberty of his country, Noah Biggs and Walter Hayes were recruits who joined the company in the fall of 1863. A hard campaign in the swamps of Arkansas, the expedition to Fort Scott and Pine Bluff. They were prostrated with fatigue and vile water, cold exposure, and fatigue inducing a chronic diarrhea, which they both died in the early summer of 1864. The saddest record is of the Schooling family sons and nephews of Robert Schooling, Joseph and William Schooling, son of John and beloved nephew as a son. No family in Adams County had 3 bright, active, healthy young men, the light hope of old age that gave so much for their country. Joseph was the image of his mother. William was the picture of his mother. They were the darlings of the household, while John Schooling, the nephew, was the size, physiognomy of the others. Exacting facial features, medium height, strong and closely built for strength and activity. They were all brave, loyal, patient, uncomplaining, ever ready for duty, good soldiers. The brothers were taken sick the same day with the measles. Lingering in Campfield Hospital, side by side, all died April 19, 1863, within a few hours of one another. They were buried in the same wide graves at Helena, and the whole company turned out to grant martial honors to the heroic dead. John Schooling, the nephew, was not sick. He marched and fought a whole year longer. He fought gallantly at Helena, at Bayou Mito, Little Rock Fort, Smith, Terra Mar, the Little Missouri Prairie, Deanne, and Commandant, the Bloody Battle of Jenkins Ford. April 3rd, when the regiment charged the rebel battery, John received a mortal wound. The bone of his right thigh was broken and he fell in the field. After the battle, the Union forces retreated and left him in the regimental hospital, which was soon captured by the rebels. How he fared, none of his friends ever knew, but the rebel archives give it that he died of his head wounds on June 18, 1864. Thus, from the same family, the whole of 3 gallant boys were forever lost, noble lives for them, country's liberty and security. It is said that all that a man has, he will give for his life. But the sacrifice of these cases is greater and grander for life itself. It is given in humble and liberal profusion for the greater and grander boon of human liberty to their fellow beings. These are not all of these sacrifices of this neighborhood, but only the ones who were buried in the Southland. Among prominent in this cemetery, the names of the gallant patriot Pleasant Brothers, the father of him soon posted. He was cruelly assassinated by a Copperhead. The name of this one from the speech. He was cruelly assassinated by a brutal Copperhead near within gunshot of this very ground. Went home on sick furlough. His own door within gunshot of this. He died in his uniform on and his face to the front, but is truly a victim of the war's rapacity, as if slain on the battlefield. The story is a long one, and the manner and its atonement by the death of his murder is was one of the tragedies of Adams County. Then there was James E. Thompson, who died shortly after his discharge. L.D. Thompson, a sergeant of Company D, who was stricken with death on the tented field, never recovered. All of whom as true tributes to patriotism as any who gave their lives. And finally, let us cherish their names and glorious and heroic deeds, and yearly scatter the tokens of love and gratitude over the graves of all, and forever keep green the sacred memories of the heroes of the Republic.